Imagine standing beneath a canopy that first unfurled when dinosaurs walked the earth. Picture roots threading through soil that has nurtured life for millions of years, long before the first human ancestor stood upright. There are places on our planet where time moves differently, where the very air you breathe passes through leaves, descended from ancestors that predated the rise and fall of entire mountain ranges. These are the world's oldest forests, living monuments to persistence, patience, and the extraordinary resilience of life itself. Welcome to Bedtime Biology, where science meets serenity. Each night, we explore the quiet wonders of the natural world, calming your mind and sparking your curiosity. If you like these videos, please consider subscribing to the channel and commenting below if you have any feedback or suggestions for topics of future episodes. Tonight, we journey into forests so ancient they challenge our very understanding of time. We will walk among trees that were saplings when the pyramids were new, explore rainforests that survived ice ages and asteroid impacts, and discover the invisible networks beneath the forest floor that connect these living giants in ways scientists are only beginning to understand. From Australia's Daintree, where flowering plants first evolved their modern forms, to California's bristlecone pines that have stood sentinel for 5,000 years, we will uncover how these forests have shaped the very atmosphere we depend upon, and why their survival matters far beyond their borders. The story of ancient forests is ultimately a story about continuity in a world of constant change, about the slow accumulation of wisdom written in wood and soil, and about ecosystems so complex that each discovery reveals 10 new mysteries. So settle in, let your thoughts drift like mist through ancient branches, and prepare to see the forest as you never have before. When scientists speak of ancient forests, they are describing ecosystems that have developed over extraordinarily long periods without significant human disturbance. These are not simply collections of old trees, though ancient forests certainly contain them. Rather, they represent complex communities that have evolved together over millennia, creating layers of ecological relationships that younger forests cannot replicate. The definition of what makes a forest ancient varies depending on where you are in the world and which species you are considering. In the United Kingdom, a woodland is considered ancient if it has existed continuously since the year 1600, before the Industrial Revolution began reshaping the landscape. In North America, old-growth forests are typically defined as those that have developed for at least 150 to 200 years without major disturbance. But when we speak of the truly ancient forests, we are looking at timescales that dwarf human civilization entirely. These ancient ecosystems possess characteristics that set them apart from younger woodlands. They contain trees at multiple stages of life, from seedlings testing their first roots to towering giants hundreds or thousands of years old, and importantly, standing dead trees and fallen logs in various stages of decay. This structural diversity creates niches for countless species, where younger forests might have a relatively uniform canopy at one height. Ancient forests show multiple canopy layers, gaps where old trees have fallen, and a forest floor littered with decomposing wood that becomes nurse logs for the next generation. The soil itself in ancient forests is fundamentally different. It contains centuries or even millennia of accumulated organic matter, creating deep humus layers teeming with fungal networks, bacteria, and countless invertebrate species found nowhere else. The age of these forests can be measured in different ways, each telling a different story about time and persistence. Some forests are ancient because they contain individual trees of enormous age. The bristlecone pines of California's White Mountains include specimens that were already ancient when the pharaohs ruled Egypt, having stood for more than 4,800 years. These individual organisms have witnessed the entire span of recorded human history from a single spot on a mountainside. Other forests are ancient, not because of the age of individual trees, but because the forest community itself has persisted in the same location for extraordinary periods. Australia's Daintree rainforest has existed as a rainforest ecosystem for approximately 180 million years, though no single tree within it approaches that age. The forest has regenerated continuously in the same place, maintaining the same basic structure and many of the same plant families through an almost inconceivable span of geological time. Then there are the fossil forests, places where we can see evidence of Earth's very first forests, now preserved in stone. The Cairo fossil forest in New York, discovered in 2019, dates back 385 million years to the Devonian period. Walking across the quarry floor is literally walking through the root systems of trees that existed 140 million years before the first dinosaurs evolved. These fossils show us what forests looked like when they were a revolutionary new feature of Earth's landscape, when the very concept of a tree was still being worked out through evolutionary trial and error. Understanding geological time helps put these ancient forests into perspective. Humans have been anatomically modern for perhaps 300,000 years. Our species has been practicing agriculture for only about 12,000 years. The oldest known writing systems emerged around 5,500 years ago. Against this timeline, consider that some of the forests we will explore tonight have persisted for periods 50 times longer than the entire span of human civilization. They have endured ice ages, periods of extreme warmth, changes in atmospheric composition, and the rise and fall of countless other species. Their persistence speaks to an adaptive capacity and ecological resilience that becomes more remarkable the longer you contemplate it. In the far northeastern corner of Australia, where the rainforest meets the Coral Sea, stretches an ecosystem that has remained essentially unchanged since the age of dinosaurs. The Daintree rainforest covers approximately 1,200 square kilometres in Queensland, but its significance far exceeds its physical size. This is not simply an old forest. It is a living library of plant evolution, a place where you can see, growing side by side, primitive flowering plants that represent some of the earliest experiments in flower and fruit production, alongside more recent evolutionary innovations. Scientists estimate the Daintree has existed as a continuous rainforest ecosystem for between 135 and 180 million years, making it older than the Amazon by nearly 100 million years. The story of the Daintree begins in the age of Gondwana, the southern supercontinent that once united South America, Africa, Antarctica, Australia, and India into a single landmass. When these continents were joined, rainforests similar to the Daintree covered vast areas. But as the continents separated and climates shifted, most of these ancient rainforests vanished. In Australia, as the continent drifted northward and became progressively drier, Rainforests contracted to small refuges along the eastern coast where rainfall remained high. The Daintree represents one of these refuges, a fragment of Gondwanan forest that survived when others perished. The forest persisted through periods of glaciation, through times when much of Australia transformed into the arid landscape we recognise today, maintaining its humid, sheltered environment along the coast. What makes the Daintree scientifically invaluable is its collection of primitive flowering plants. Of the 19 most ancient families of flowering plants known to science, 12 exist in the Daintree. This is a higher concentration than found in all the rainforests of South America combined, including the vast Amazon. These primitive families provide crucial insights into how flowering plants evolved from their earlier ancestors. Consider Idiospermum australiense, known locally as the idiot fruit, found only in the Daintree lowlands. This species is so primitive that it shares characteristics with the very earliest flowering plants, yet it continues to thrive in its specialized niche. Its large fruits cannot be dispersed by any living animal, suggesting they co-evolved with megafauna that went extinct thousands of years ago. Yet the plant persists, a living fossil adapted to conditions that no longer fully exist. The animal life of the Daintree reflects this same ancient heritage. The southern cassowary, a massive, flightless bird standing nearly 2 meters tall with a distinctive blue head and neck, represents a lineage that stretches back to the time of Gondwana. These birds are not merely inhabitants of the forest, they are essential to its structure. Cassowaries can swallow and digest fruits that are toxic to other animals, and their digestive systems have been shown to improve seed germination rates for at least 70 species of rainforest trees. They disperse these seeds across territories that can span several kilometers, essentially planting the next generation of forest as they move through their domain. Without cassowaries, the composition of the Daintree would fundamentally change. Many tree species depend entirely on these birds for reproduction, creating a relationship that has likely persisted for millions of years. Bennett's tree kangaroo represents another ancient lineage, a marsupial that returned to the trees after its ancestors adapted to ground dwelling. These animals are supremely adapted to the canopy, with enormously powerful forelimbs for climbing and a long tail for balance as they navigate branches 50 meters above the forest floor. They can leap 9 meters between trees, moving through the canopy with a grace that seems impossible for an animal that can weigh up to 13 kilograms. Watching a tree kangaroo is glimpsing a solution to the problem of how to be a large mammal in the treetops, one that evolved in isolation from similar animals elsewhere in the world. Their presence in the Daintree represents an unbroken line of marsupial evolution, stretching back to when Australia was still part of Gondwana. The forest structure itself reflects this immense age. Individual trees can soar to heights exceeding 60 meters, their trunks wrapped in epiphytes and lianas. The canopy is so dense that little light reaches the forest floor, creating a dim, cathedral-like atmosphere even at midday. The forest floor, where light permits, hosts ancient ferns and club mosses, plant groups that predate flowering plants entirely. 7 of Earth's oldest surviving fern species grow in the Daintree, living representations of plant groups that first evolved when the land was still being colonized by green life. These ferns look much as their ancestors would have hundreds of millions of years ago. their fundamental design so successful that evolution has found little reason to modify it. The river systems threading through the Daintree add another dimension to this ancient ecosystem. The Daintree River itself shifts between fresh and brackish water depending on tides, creating unique conditions at the interface between forest and sea. Saltwater crocodiles, living relatives of the dinosaurs and essentially unchanged for millions of years, patrol these waters. These apex predators can exceed 7 meters in length and weigh more than 1,000 kilograms. They represent one of the few large predators that has persisted from the Cretaceous period to the present. And encountering one is encountering a design so refined over geological time that it needs no improvement. The river systems support their own unique communities. Mangrove forests fringe the tidal zones, their specialized root systems filtering salt and providing nursery habitat for fish and crustaceans. 28 of Australia's 36 mangrove species grow in the Daintree region, creating one of the most diverse mangrove ecosystems anywhere. These mangroves form a transition between the terrestrial rainforest and marine environments, hosting species adapted to both. Mud lobsters burrow in the substrate, creating networks of tunnels that aerate the soil. Fish adapted to brackish water move with the tides, feeding during high water and retreating to deep pools during low tide. The relationship between the forest and the reef here is particularly significant. The Daintree is one of the only places on Earth where tropical rainforest meets coral reef directly. The Great Barrier Reef lies just offshore, its outermost edges visible from elevated points in the forest. Nutrients washing from the forest influence the reef's productivity, while the reef structure protects the coast from wave action, creating the calm conditions that allow mangroves to thrive. This terrestrial marine connection has existed for millions of years, creating evolutionary relationships between species in the two ecosystems that we are only beginning to understand. Among the smaller inhabitants of the Daintree, the insect diversity reaches staggering proportions. More than 12,000 insect species have been identified, and this is certainly an underestimate. Many canopy species remain unknown to science because the canopy itself, 50 to 60 meters above ground, is difficult to access. The insects include spectacular examples of convergent evolution, where similar ecological roles have produced similar body forms in unrelated lineages. Stick insects that perfectly mimic twigs. Leaf insects whose wings are indistinguishable from foliage. Moths with wing patterns that make them invisible against lichen-covered bark. One insect deserves special mention for its importance to the ecosystem. The Ulysses butterfly, with wings of electric blue edged in black, is one of Australia's most spectacular butterflies. These large swallowtails have a wingspan exceeding 14 centimeters, and males patrol territories through the forest canopy, their blue wings flashing as they search for females. But their significance extends beyond beauty. The caterpillars feed exclusively on plants in the citrus family, and the adults pollinate numerous rainforest flowers. Their presence indicates the health of the entire ecosystem, as they require intact forest with both their host plants and the flowers that provide adult nectar. The Daintree River ringtail possum, a species found nowhere else on Earth, represents the kind of specialized endemic evolution that occurs in long isolated ecosystems. This small marsupial, weighing less than 1 kilogram, has a prehensile tail that acts as a fifth limb in the canopy. It feeds on leaves, fruits, and flowers moving through the treetops at night. Like many rainforest specialists, it requires continuous canopy cover, unable to cross even small gaps. The possum's entire existence depends on the three-dimensional structure of the ancient forest, and its survival is inseparable from the forest's preservation. The musky rat kangaroo, another Daintree endemic, is the smallest and most primitive member of the kangaroo family. Unlike other kangaroos, it walks on all fours rather than hopping, a remnant of ancestral locomotion patterns. It is also the only kangaroo that regularly gives birth to twins rather than a single offspring. During the day, it forages on the forest floor for fallen fruits and fungi, using its keen sense of smell to locate food items. Its habits link it intimately with the forest's decomposition processes, as it helps disperse fungal spores and plant seeds, contributing to the regeneration cycle that has sustained the forest for millions of years. More than halfway around the world from Australia, the Malay Peninsula holds another ancient treasure. Taman Negara National Park in Malaysia protects 130 million years of continuous rainforest, a span of time that encompasses the entire age of flowering plants. The name Taman Negara translates simply as National Park in Malay, but this understates its significance. Here, spread across more than 4,300 square kilometers in the states of Pahang, Kelantan, and Terengganu, exists one of Earth's most biodiverse and least disturbed tropical rainforests. Unlike the Daintree, which represents a fragment of a once much larger ecosystem, Taman Negara has remained relatively stable in extent through deep time. The climate here, hot and humid year-round, with rainfall exceeding 2,500 millimeters annually, has persisted with remarkable consistency. While ice ages gripped higher latitudes, transforming landscapes and driving species to extinction, Taman Negara remained a humid jungle. This climatic stability has allowed species to evolve and diversify without the periodic catastrophic disturbances that occurred elsewhere. The result is an ecosystem of staggering complexity. The park contains approximately 10,000 plant species, including representatives from 224 different plant families. The dominant trees belong to the dipterocarp family, massive emergent species that can exceed 80 meters in height. Dipterocarps are the giants of Southeast Asian rainforests, and their flowering and fruiting patterns shape the entire ecosystem. These trees do not flower every year. Instead, they participate in mass flowering events that occur irregularly, sometimes with gaps of several years between events. When these flowerings occur, the entire forest erupts with blossoms simultaneously, overwhelming seed predators with sheer abundance and ensuring that enough seeds survive to germinate. Scientists believe these mass flowerings are triggered by subtle changes in temperature or dry periods, environmental cues that the trees somehow sense and respond to collectively. This coordination across thousands of individual trees, sometimes of different species, represents a communication system we are only beginning to understand. The animal diversity of Taman Negara reflects its ancient stability. At least 150 species of mammals live here, including some of the most charismatic and endangered animals in Southeast Asia. The Malayan tiger, a critically endangered subspecies found nowhere else, hunts through these forests. Fewer than 150 individuals remain in the wild, and Taman Negara represents one of their most important strongholds. These tigers are smaller than their northern relatives, an adaptation to hunting in dense forest where agility matters more than raw size. They prey on sambar deer, wild boar, and smaller mammals, their presence maintaining the balance between herbivores and vegetation. Asian elephants move through Taman Negara in family groups, following routes their ancestors have used for centuries. These elephants are forest specialists, smaller than their African cousins, and with proportionally smaller ears. They shape the forest as they move, creating clearings, spreading seeds in their dung, and maintaining trails that other animals use. Their impact extends to the very structure of the forest, as they preferentially feed on certain plant species, giving advantage to others. In this way, the presence of elephants over millions of years has influenced which plants thrive in Taman Negara, a process of coevolution between the largest herbivores and the forest itself. The Malayan tapir, with its distinctive black and white coloration, represents one of the most ancient mammal lineages still surviving. Tapirs have existed in essentially their current form for millions of years. Their peculiar design, somewhere between a pig and an elephant with a prehensile snout, perfectly adapted to browsing on forest vegetation. They are primarily nocturnal and solitary, moving silently through the understory, using trails only they seem to know. Their coloration, which seems conspicuous in daylight, provides excellent camouflage in the dappled moonlight of the forest at night, breaking up their outline so they blend into shadows. Mount Tahan, the highest peak in Peninsular Malaysia, at 2,187 meters, rises within the park's boundaries. The forests change with elevation, from the lowland dipterocarp forests through montane forests dominated by oak and chestnut species, to the cloud forests near the summit where trees are smaller and festooned with mosses and epiphytes. This elevational gradient compresses climate zones that would span thousands of kilometers horizontally into a vertical distance you could hike in a day, creating distinct ecological communities stacked atop one another. The bird diversity of Taman Negara exceeds 675 species, representing a significant portion of all bird species found in Southeast Asia. Among these are some of the region's most spectacular species, including 8 species of hornbills. These large birds, with their enormous cask-topped bills, are the Old World equivalents of toucans. They nest in tree cavities, and the female seals herself inside during incubation, relying entirely on the male to bring food through a small opening. This nesting strategy protects eggs and chicks from predators, but it means hornbills require old-growth forest with large, hollow trees. As such, they serve as indicators of forest health. Where hornbills thrive, the ancient forest structure remains intact. The great Argus pheasant, one of the largest pheasants in the world, performs one of nature's most elaborate courtship displays in the understory of Taman Negara. Males clear circular arenas on the forest floor, removing all leaf litter and vegetation to create a stage. When a female approaches, the male spreads his enormously long wing feathers in a fan that can exceed 2 meters in width, covered in eye spots that create an almost hypnotic pattern. He dances around the female, rustling his feathers and calling in a display that has evolved over millions of years in these undisturbed forests. The preservation of these display sites, which males may use for their entire lives, requires forest stability over decades. Among the more elusive inhabitants of Taman Negara are the sun bears, the smallest bears in the world, standing only about 70 centimeters at the shoulder. Despite their small size, they are expert climbers, ascending trees to feed on honey, fruit, and insects. Their long tongues, extending up to 25 centimeters, allow them to extract insects from deep within tree bark and to reach honey in bee nests. Sun bears are solitary and primarily nocturnal, making them difficult to observe. They play important roles in seed dispersal and pest control, consuming large quantities of termites and ants that might otherwise damage living trees. The forest's reptile diversity includes numerous species found nowhere else. Boyd's forest dragon, a lizard that can grow to nearly 1 meter in length, including its tail, lives exclusively in the cool, moist forests of this region. It is arboreal, spending most of its time clinging to tree trunks or resting on branches, its cryptic coloration making it nearly invisible against bark. When threatened, it can change color, darkening or lightening to match its background. These dragons feed on insects, small vertebrates, and fruits, occupying a niche that has persisted in these forests for millions of years. The canopy walkway at Taman Negara, suspended 45 meters above the forest floor and extending for over 500 meters, offers a rare perspective on the forest's vertical structure. From this vantage point, the layering becomes apparent. The emergent trees rise above the main canopy, their crowns exposed to full sunlight, and the attentions of canopy-dwelling eagles and large fruit bats. Below them, the main canopy forms a nearly continuous layer of foliage, home to countless species that may never descend to the ground. Gibbons swing through these heights, their long arms allowing them to brachiate from branch to branch. Their haunting morning calls carry for kilometers, establishing territory and strengthening pair bonds. Beneath the main canopy lies the understory, a dimmer realm where light is filtered through multiple layers of leaves. Here grow smaller trees, palms, and climbing plants that ascend toward the light. The air at this level is humid and still, temperatures moderated by the canopy overhead. Ferns and ginger plants dominate the herb layer, their large leaves capturing the minimal light that reaches them. Fungi of countless species grow on every available surface, from tiny cup fungi on fallen twigs to massive bracket fungi on tree trunks. The tallest trees in Taman Negara, certain dipterocarp species, can exceed 80 meters in height. Their trunks rise straight and branchless for the first 50 meters, an adaptation to reach sunlight in the intensely competitive environment of the rainforest. When these giants eventually fall, whether from age, wind, or lightning, they create massive gaps that can take a century or more to refill. The sudden influx of light to the forest floor triggers what is called a regeneration pulse, where thousands of seeds germinate simultaneously, beginning a race toward the canopy that will take decades to resolve. The rivers draining from Taman Negara's highlands support unique aquatic communities. The Malaysian marcia, a large fish that can exceed 40 kilograms, lives in these fast-flowing streams. It requires clean, oxygenated water and gravel beds for spawning, conditions that exist only in pristine watersheds. The presence of marcia indicates that the forest is functioning properly, its canopy protecting streams from excessive heating, its root systems preventing erosion that would choke the gravel spawning beds with silt. From the humid tropics of Malaysia, we journey to one of the harshest environments on Earth to find trees that redefine our understanding of longevity. In the White Mountains of California and Nevada, at elevations between 3,000 and 3,400 meters, grow the Great Basin bristlecone pines, Pinus longiva. These are not forests in the traditional sense. The trees grow far apart, each one standing in stark isolation against a landscape of white dolomite rock and windswept slopes. Yet, these scattered individuals include some of the oldest living organisms on Earth. The most famous bristlecone pine, known as Methuselah, has been verified at 4,857 years old. This single tree germinated around the year 2831, before the Common Era, before the First Egyptian dynasty, before Stonehenge was constructed, before writing was invented. It has been continuously alive, growing new needles and surviving on one of Earth's most unforgiving mountainsides for a span of time that encompasses essentially all of recorded human history. Another specimen, called Prometheus, was found to be 4,950 years old when it was cut down in 1964 during a research project, a decision that sparked changes in how ancient trees are studied and protected. Everything about bristlecone pines speaks to survival under extreme duress. They grow where almost nothing else can, in alkaline dolomite soils that are toxic to most plants. The soil provides almost no nutrients, yet bristlecones have adapted to extract what little exists. Their growth rate is extraordinarily slow, sometimes adding less than 1/100th of an inch to their girth in a year. This slow growth creates wood that is extraordinarily dense and resinous, almost immune to decay and highly resistant to insects and disease. Dead bristlecone wood can remain standing or lying on the ground for thousands of years, barely showing signs of weathering. The tree's appearance reflects this harsh environment. Young bristlecones, a few hundred years old, may appear relatively normal, with full crowns of foliage. But the ancient specimens are twisted and gnarled, with most of their wood dead, and only narrow strips of living tissue connecting roots to a few living branches. This strip bark growth pattern is a survival adaptation. When part of the tree is damaged by lightning, wind, or extreme cold, that section of bark and the underlying cambium dies. Rather than the entire tree perishing, it isolates the damaged section and continues growing from the undamaged portions. Some bristlecones are 90% dead wood, with only 10% of their circumference still alive. Yet that narrow strip is sufficient to support the entire tree. The needles themselves are adapted for extreme conditions. Unlike most pines that shed their needles every 2 to 3 years, bristlecone needles can remain on the tree for 30 to 40 years. This longevity conserves the energy that would otherwise go into growing new needles every year. The needles cluster at the tips of branches, giving the tree a bottle brush appearance. They are designed to conserve water with a thick, waxy coating and minimal surface area, crucial adaptations in an environment where most precipitation falls as snow and summer drought is the norm. These trees exist in what appears to be a nearly frozen moment in time. The growing season at 3,000 meters in the White Mountains lasts perhaps 6 weeks. Winter temperatures can plunge to -30 degrees Celsius. Summer brings intense solar radiation and dry winds. Yet, within these constraints, bristlecones have found not merely survival, but a form of immortality. Studies of their cellular biology have revealed they possess higher than normal levels of telomerase, an enzyme that helps prevent the degradation of chromosomes that normally occurs with aging. Their cells, in essence, age more slowly than those of other organisms. The ancient bristlecones serve another crucial function. Their growth rings provide a continuous climate record spanning thousands of years. By analysing the width of each annual ring, scientists can reconstruct patterns of wet and dry years extending back almost 10,000 years, when living trees are cross-dated with preserved deadwood. This chronology has been essential for calibrating radiocarbon dating and understanding past climate variations. The trees are living climate archives, their wood preserving information about every year of their existence. The precision of this climate record is remarkable. A good year, with adequate snowmelt providing moisture during the growing season, produces a ring that might be a millimetre wide. A drought year produces a ring barely visible even under magnification, sometimes only a few cells thick. These variations, repeated across thousands of trees, both living and dead, allow scientists to construct master chronologies that can date any piece of bristlecone wood to the exact year it grew. This technique, called dendrochronology, has revolutionized archaeology and climate science, allowing precise dating of ancient wooden artifacts and detailed reconstruction of past climate patterns. The elevation at which bristlecones grow creates its own challenges and opportunities. At 3,000 to 3,400 meters, the air is thin, containing only about 2/3 the oxygen found at sea level. Ultraviolet radiation is intense, potentially damaging cellular DNA. But these harsh conditions also protect the trees from many threats. Few insects can survive at such elevations. The cold temperatures and dry conditions prevent most fungal diseases. Fire, while possible, rarely spreads far because vegetation is sparse and fuels limited. The tree's main threats are lightning strikes, which can split trunks or kill portions of the tree, and wind, which can topple trees in severe storms. Though the tree's low profile and deep roots provide considerable stability. Recent research has revealed another secret to bristlecone longevity. As the trees age, they actually become more resistant to stress, not less. This contradicts what we see in most organisms, where aging brings increased vulnerability. But bristlecones appear to strengthen their defenses as centuries pass. Their wood becomes denser and more resinous. Their ability to compartmentalize damage improves. Their production of defensive compounds increases. In essence, an ancient bristlecone is better equipped to survive stress than a younger one, a biological inversion of the usual aging process. The spacing between bristlecones on the mountainside is not random. The trees position themselves to maximize access to limited resources while minimizing competition. Where soil pockets are deep enough to support trees, you typically find one bristlecone occupying that spot. The nearest neighbor may be 20 or 30 meters away in the next suitable location. This spacing prevents direct root competition and reduces the likelihood of fungal diseases spreading between trees. It also means that if lightning strikes one tree, neighboring trees are far enough away to avoid damage, a form of risk spreading that has served the population well over millennia. The genetic diversity among bristlecone populations raises interesting questions about adaptation and evolution. Different populations show genetic differences reflecting their isolation in separate mountain ranges. Some populations appear better adapted to resist drought, others to withstand cold. This variation suggests that bristlecones are not evolutionarily static, frozen in time. They continue to evolve, albeit slowly, as environmental conditions select for different traits in different locations. Understanding this genetic structure is crucial for conservation, as protecting multiple populations preserves the full range of adaptive capacity the species possesses. Reproduction in bristlecones is itself a study in patience. The trees do not reach reproductive maturity until they are at least 50 years old, and often not until they are much older. Once mature, they produce cones every year, but seed production is irregular, with good seed years occurring perhaps once or twice per decade. Seeds must land in a suitable microsite with adequate moisture and protection from wind, germinate successfully, and survive their vulnerable early years. Mortality among seedlings is extraordinarily high, yet over centuries, enough survive to maintain the population. The future of bristlecone pines in a warming climate remains uncertain. Their current range is defined by both upper and lower elevation limits. As temperatures warm, the suitable climate zone may shift upward on the mountains. But bristlecones already occupy the highest elevations where trees can grow. Unlike species at lower elevations that might track their climate envelope upslope, bristlecones have nowhere to go. They are literally at the top of their mountains. If warming continues, they may find their current locations becoming unsuitable, with no higher ground to retreat to. This possibility makes understanding and protecting current populations all the more urgent. Standing among these ancient trees on a windswept ridge, with views stretching across basin and range country, the silence is profound. There are no other large plants here, minimal animal life, just the whisper of wind across stone and the rare creak of ancient wood. These trees have outlasted everything. They were old when Rome fell. They were ancient when the first European explorers reached the Americas. And if left undisturbed, they might continue for thousands of years more, adding ring after ring in their patient accounting of time. Across the Caspian Sea, another ancient forest tells a story of survival through ice ages. The Hyrcanian forests stretch in a green arc along the southern coast of the Caspian Sea, and the northern slopes of the Alborz Mountains, spanning approximately 850 kilometers across northern Iran and into southeastern Azerbaijan. These broad-leaved temperate forests are estimated to be between 25 and 50 million years old, making them among the oldest forest ecosystems on Earth. Their history intersects with some of the most dramatic climate changes of the past several million years, yet they persist. During the Tertiary period, between 25 and 50 million years ago, forests similar to the Hyrcanian covered much of the northern temperate zone across Europe and Asia. As Earth's climate cooled and the Quaternary ice ages began around 2.6 million years ago, these forests retreated and largely disappeared from Europe and Western Asia. The Hyrcanian forests survived by serving as a glacial refugium, a place where the Caspian Sea's moderating influence on temperature and the mountains' effect on precipitation created conditions where the forest could persist even as ice sheets advanced elsewhere. During glacial periods, the forest contracted to smaller protected areas. During warmer interglacial periods, it expanded again. This repeated expansion and contraction, this rhythmic breathing over millions of years, shaped the forest's unique biodiversity. The Hyrcanian region contains over 3,200 species of vascular plants, a remarkable number for a temperate forest. Perhaps most significantly, approximately 280 species are endemic to the Hyrcanian region, found naturally nowhere else on Earth. These endemic species evolved in isolation as the forest served as a refugium, cut off from similar forests elsewhere. Many of these plants are living fossils, representatives of lineages that once had much wider distributions, but survive only here. The Persian ironwood, Parotia persica, is endemic to the Hyrcanian forests and northern Iran. This tree, belonging to a genus with only one species, represents an ancient lineage. Pure stands of Persian ironwood create forests of extraordinary beauty, with lichen-covered branches intertwining in Gothic tangles overhead, while the forest floor remains in deep shade, carpeted only with the previous year's leaves. In autumn, the ironwood's leaves turn brilliant shades of yellow and purple before falling, a deciduous habit in a region where many trees are evergreen. The wood itself is extremely hard and dense, prized historically for tool handles and weapons, though the tree is now protected. The Caucasian wingnut, Pterocarya fraxinifolia, grows along streams and in wet bottomlands throughout the Hyrcanian forests. This fast-growing tree can reach heights of 40 meters, with compound leaves over 40 centimeters long. It produces distinctive winged nuts that are dispersed by water, allowing the species to colonize new areas along river systems. Like the ironwood, the wingnut is a relict species, part of a genus that was once widespread but now exists in only a few scattered locations. The Caucasian zelkova, Zelkova carpinifolia, is another endemic species that can live for hundreds of years. These trees develop massive trunks with deeply furrowed bark and spreading crowns. Old zelkovas become covered in epiphytes, mosses, and lichens, creating miniature ecosystems in their branches. The zelkova is in the elm family, closely related to the American elm that was decimated by Dutch elm disease. But the Hyrcanian zelkovas have survived in their isolated refuge. The fauna of the Hyrcanian forests includes 58 species of mammals and 180 species of birds. Among the mammals, the Persian leopard is the most iconic and endangered. These leopards are the largest of the leopard subspecies, adapted to the cooler climate of the Caspian region. They prey on wild goats, roe deer, and wild boar. Fewer than 1,000 individuals remain across their entire range, which extends beyond the Hyrcanian forests but includes them as critical habitat. The forests also support wolves and brown bears, both of which require large territories and intact ecosystems to survive. The structure of the Hyrcanian forests changes with elevation. The lowland forests below 700 meters are dominated by chestnut-leaved oak, European hornbeam, and ironwood. Between 700 and 1500 meters, oriental beech becomes dominant, forming pure stands in the cloudy middle elevations where fog and mist are frequent. Above 1500 meters, the forest transitions again to mountain forests with hornbeam and maple species adapted to colder conditions. This vertical stratification creates a series of overlapping ecosystems, each with its own assemblage of species. Old trees in the Hyrcanian forests can reach 300 to 400 years of age, and some may be 500 years old or more. While this does not approach the age of bristlecone pines, it represents many generations of human lifetimes. These old trees serve as keystones for the forest, their large trunks providing nesting sites for birds and denning sites for mammals, their thick branches supporting heavy loads of epiphytes, their eventual fall creating clearings where light suddenly floods the forest floor, and a new generation of seedlings can compete for space. To truly understand the antiquity of forests, we must travel even further back in time, to an era when the very concept of a forest was new. 2019, scientists announced the discovery of the oldest known forest ecosystem in the world, preserved as fossils in a quarry near Cairo, New York. The Cairo fossil forest dates to 385 million years ago, during the Middle Devonian period. It predates the previously known oldest forest, the Gilboa forest, about 40 kilometers away, by about 3 million years. The fossils at Cairo show an extraordinary snapshot of what Earth looked like when forests were still a recent innovation. The dominant trees were called Archaeopteris, which despite their name were not related to flowering plants, or even to most modern trees. They resembled tree ferns, with a central trunk crowned by a spreading canopy of branches covered in fern-like leaves. These trees could reach heights of 10 meters or more, absolutely towering over the low vegetation that had dominated land surfaces for the previous 100 million years. The quarry floor at Cairo represents a horizontal slice through the ancient soil, showing the root systems of these trees exactly where they grew. The roots spread laterally, branching and rebranching, creating a network that stabilized soil and changed the landscape fundamentally. Before trees evolved deep root systems, rivers would have been very different, prone to rapid changes in course because nothing held the banks stable. The evolution of deep roots changed river behavior, reduced erosion, and allowed soil to accumulate in ways it could not before. These early forests had a profound impact on Earth's atmosphere and climate. As the roots penetrated deep into rock, they accelerated chemical weathering, a process where minerals in rock react with carbon dioxide dissolved in water, eventually locking that carbon away in sediments. This weathering, amplified by the vast surface area of root systems and enhanced by acids released by the roots themselves, pulled enormous quantities of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, which had been 10 to 15 times higher than present-day levels before forests evolved, dropped to near modern levels within a few tens of millions of years after forests became widespread. This drop in carbon dioxide had cascading effects. As a greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide helps trap heat in the atmosphere. When its concentration plummeted, global temperatures fell. Scientists believe the spread of forests and the resulting atmospheric changes may have triggered the ice ages of the late Devonian and Carboniferous periods. In essence, forests changed the climate of the entire planet. The oxygen that accumulated as carbon dioxide was removed helped create conditions that would later allow the evolution of large animals, including insects with wingspans of 70 centimeters that flew through the Carboniferous forests, growing from the soils the Devonian forests had created. The trees of the Cairo forest did not have seeds as we understand them today. They reproduced through spores, like ferns, though they had evolved wood and tree-like structure. True seed plants would not evolve until later in the Devonian. Yet even these primitive trees were sophisticated organisms, with conducting tissues to move water and nutrients, growth rings showing seasonal patterns, and root systems capable of supporting structures 10 meters tall. Standing in the Cairo quarry today, you can see the ghostly outlines of these ancient roots traced in the rock. Each depression marks where a root once grew. By mapping these traces across the quarry floor, scientists have reconstructed where individual trees stood and how they were spaced. The spacing suggests these trees grew about 2 to 3 meters apart, far enough that their crowns would not have touched, but close enough that they created a continuous canopy that shaded the forest floor. This spacing is similar to what you might find in some modern forests, suggesting that even 385 million years ago, trees had evolved strategies to balance competition for light against the need for sufficient resources. Beneath our feet, in any ancient forest, exists a world as complex and interconnected as the canopy above. The soil of old-growth forests is fundamentally different from young forest soil, both in structure and in the communities of organisms it supports. Deep layers of partially decomposed organic matter, accumulated over centuries, create a spongy substrate that holds moisture and nutrients. But the most remarkable feature of ancient forest soils is largely invisible: a vast network of fungal threads called mycelium that connects trees to each other and fundamentally changes how the forest functions. These mycorrhizal networks, sometimes called the wood wide web, represent a symbiotic relationship between fungi and tree roots that may be as old as forests themselves. The relationship is mutualistic. The fungus colonizes the tree's root tips, extending thread-like hyphae out into the soil, far beyond where the roots alone could reach. These hyphae, finer than the finest root hair, can explore the soil in 3 dimensions, accessing nutrients and water from tiny pores and crevices that roots cannot penetrate. The fungus absorbs these nutrients and transfers them to the tree. In exchange, the tree provides the fungus with sugars produced through photosynthesis, up to 30% of the carbon the tree fixes from the atmosphere. But the network does more than simply feed individual trees. A single fungal individual can connect to multiple trees, and a single tree can be connected to multiple fungal species simultaneously. This creates a web of connections linking trees throughout the forest. Studies using isotope tracing have shown that carbon can move from one tree to another through these fungal connections. A large, sun-exposed tree producing excess sugar through photosynthesis can share that sugar through the network with smaller, shaded trees that cannot photosynthesize as efficiently. This sharing appears to be directional and potentially even selective. Some research suggests that mother trees, large established individuals, may preferentially send resources to their own seedlings, recognizing kin through chemical signals. The networks also facilitate communication. When a tree is attacked by insects, it can release chemical signals that travel through the fungal network to neighboring trees, which then begin producing defensive compounds even before the insects reach them. This early warning system gives the forest a form of collective defense that individual trees alone could not achieve. The fungi themselves benefit from maintaining healthy host trees, as their own survival depends on the carbon those trees provide. A network that keeps multiple trees healthy and productive ensures the fungus has reliable carbon sources even if individual trees fall to disease or disturbance. The complexity of these networks in ancient forests far exceeds what exists in younger woodlands. Old-growth forests contain a higher diversity of mycorrhizal fungal species, with different species specializing in different roles. Some excel at mining nutrients from rock, releasing acids that dissolve minerals. Others specialize in decomposing organic matter, breaking down complex molecules that would otherwise remain locked in dead plant material. Still, others form extensive networks linking many trees, while some form more intimate partnerships with only one or a few individuals. This diversity creates redundancy and resilience. If one fungal species is eliminated by disease or environmental change, others can compensate, maintaining the network's function. Research on mycorrhizal networks has revealed behaviors that challenge our traditional understanding of plants as isolated individuals. In one study, researchers found that when a tree was shaded, reducing its ability to photosynthesize, neighboring trees increased their transfer of carbon through the fungal network to the struggling individual. This suggests a form of reciprocal altruism, where trees support each other through difficult periods, maintaining the network's overall health. The mechanism by which trees sense a neighbor's need and respond remains unknown, but the evidence for such communication is mounting. Different types of mycorrhizal fungi form different kinds of partnerships. Ectomycorrhizal fungi, common in temperate and boreal forests, form a sheath around root tips and send hyphae between root cells. Arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, more common in tropical forests and among herbaceous plants, actually penetrate root cells, forming tree-like structures called arbuscules inside the cells where nutrient exchange occurs. Both types can form networks, but they function somewhat differently. Ectomycorrhizal networks in ancient forests, like those dominated by oak, beech, or pine, can be extraordinarily extensive, with a single fungal individual potentially connecting dozens or even hundreds of trees. The visible fruiting bodies of these fungi, the mushrooms that appear seasonally on the forest floor, represent only a tiny fraction of the organism. A single mushroom might be connected to kilometers of mycelium threading through the soil. In autumn, in ancient forests, the ground can be carpeted with mushrooms of dozens of species, from tiny delicate forms to large, fleshy bullets. Each represents a different species with a different ecological role, and all are part of the forest's underground infrastructure. Among the most fascinating discoveries about mycorrhizal networks is their apparent ability to connect trees of different species. In mixed forests, where multiple tree species grow together, a single fungal network can link species as different as fir and birch, oak and pine. This interspecific networking has important implications for forest resilience. It means that when one species is stressed by drought, insects, or disease, other species in the network may be able to support it. It also suggests that maintaining species diversity in forests is important not just for biodiversity in the traditional sense, but for the functioning of these below-ground networks that underpin forest health. Some ancient forests contain fungal species found nowhere else, endemic fungi that have evolved in association with specific tree species or soil conditions over thousands or millions of years. These endemic fungi may possess unique capabilities for nutrient acquisition or stress tolerance. Their loss would represent not just a reduction in biodiversity, but a loss of functional capacity from the ecosystem, potentially making it less able to cope with environmental change. The networks also play crucial roles in carbon sequestration. When trees pump carbon into the soil through their fungal partners, some of that carbon remains in the soil for long periods. The fungal mycelium itself, when it dies, becomes part of the soil organic matter. In ancient forests, with centuries of fungal activity, soil carbon stocks can be enormous. This carbon storage represents a climate service that forests provide, removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and locking it away in stable forms. Disrupting these networks through logging or other disturbances releases some of this stored carbon, contributing to atmospheric carbon dioxide levels. The visible fruiting bodies of these fungi, the mushrooms that appear seasonally on the forest floor, represent only a tiny fraction of the organism. A single mushroom might be connected to kilometers of mycelium threading through the soil. In autumn, in ancient forests, the ground can be carpeted with mushrooms of dozens of species, from tiny delicate forms to large fleshy boletes. Each represents a different species with a different ecological role, and all are part of the forest's underground infrastructure. Bacteria, too, play crucial roles. Some form nodules on tree roots, fixing atmospheric nitrogen and making it available to plants. Others decompose organic matter, breaking complex molecules into simpler forms that can be absorbed. The interactions between bacteria, fungi, and plant roots create a soil ecosystem of staggering complexity. A single gram of forest soil can contain billions of bacterial cells, representing thousands of species, along with meters of fungal hyphae, countless protozoa, nematodes, and microscopic arthropods. This soil community processes all the organic matter that falls to the forest floor, recycling nutrients and making them available for uptake again. Ancient forests demonstrate this complexity most dramatically. The sheer accumulation of organic matter, the diversity of niches created by centuries of undisturbed development, and the long periods for specialized species to evolve mean that old-growth soil communities have no equivalent in younger forests. Some fungal species are found exclusively in old growth, unable to establish in younger stands, even when they are the same age as when the old-growth trees first established. The difference lies not just in age, but in the continuous, undisturbed development that allows complex networks to form and stabilize over centuries. Life in ancient forests follows rhythms that span centuries. Individual trees live and die, but the forest persists, regenerating continuously in a cycle that has repeated for millions of years. This regeneration does not happen uniformly. Ancient forests are dynamic ecosystems, constantly changing even as their overall structure remains consistent. Understanding this cycle requires looking at how trees grow, mature, age, and ultimately fall, and what happens in the spaces they leave behind. A tree in an ancient forest typically begins life in a gap, a space where a previous tree has fallen. The fall of a large tree creates a temporary opening in the canopy, allowing sunlight to reach the forest floor. Seeds that have lain dormant in the soil, sometimes for years or decades, suddenly receive the light they need to germinate. Different tree species have different strategies for exploiting these gaps. Some, called pioneer species, grow extremely rapidly, racing to fill the canopy space before their competitors. They produce abundant seeds and can colonize new gaps quickly, but they typically have short lifespans, perhaps only a century or two. Other species, the climax species, grow more slowly but can tolerate shade. Their seedlings can survive under the canopy for years, waiting for their chance. When a gap opens, they may not grow as quickly as pioneers, but they ultimately outlive them, eventually dominating the canopy. In truly ancient forests, this succession has played out many times. The pioneers have come and gone repeatedly, and the canopy is dominated by long-lived climax species that can persist for centuries. As trees mature, they accumulate characteristics that increase their ecological value. Their bark thickens, providing habitat for insects and nesting birds. their crowns develop complex architecture with multiple layers of branches, creating different microclimates and niches. They develop cavities, either from decay or from the work of woodpeckers, which become nesting sites for owls, parrots, and cavity-nesting mammals. Epiphytes, plants that grow on other plants without being parasitic, colonize the branches of old trees. In tropical ancient forests, like the Daintree and Taman Nagara, the branches of canopy trees can support entire gardens of orchids, ferns, and bromeliads, creating aerial ecosystems fed by rainwater and nutrients from decomposing organic matter that accumulates in branch crotches. When an old tree finally falls, whether from wind, disease, lightning, or simply the accumulation of centuries, it does not simply disappear. In ancient forests, dead wood persists for decades, or even centuries, going through stages of decay that each support different communities of organisms. A freshly fallen log is relatively intact, its wood still hard and bark still attached. Beetles bore into the sapwood, creating galleries where they lay their eggs. Fungi begin breaking down the wood, softening it, and making nutrients more accessible. As years pass, the log becomes a nurse log, providing an ideal substrate for seedling establishment. The elevated position keeps seedlings above the deep leaf litter, where they might otherwise be smothered. The decaying wood retains moisture even during dry periods. Fungal mycelium from the decomposing log can form immediate connections with seedling roots, providing nutrients and accelerating growth. In some ancient forests, most tree regeneration occurs on nurse logs rather than directly on the soil. You can sometimes see this in the structure of old trees, where multiple trunks of a single species grow in a straight line, each one having originally germinated on the same nurse log that has long since completely decomposed and disappeared. The decomposition of a large tree can take a century or more in temperate climates, even longer in cold boreal forests. Throughout this time, the log provides habitat. Salamanders shelter in the moist spaces beneath. Small mammals create burrows. Birds excavate nest cavities. Fungi produce fruiting bodies. Insects in various stages of decay specialize on wood in particular stages of decomposition. The log becomes a hub of activity, supporting more biomass and diversity than it did when it was a living tree. Eventually, the log breaks down completely, its substance returned to the soil. The nutrients that were locked in its wood for centuries become available again. The carbon returns to the atmosphere or becomes incorporated into new growth. The space it occupied can be colonized by new plants. The cycle begins again, and it has been beginning again in ancient forests for an amount of time that makes human history seem like the blink of an eye. Looking forward, we must ask what will become of these ancient forests. They face threats that their millions of years of existence have not prepared them for. Climate change is altering temperature and precipitation patterns faster than at any time in the past several million years. Many ancient forests exist in climate zones that are shifting geographically. The Hyakanian forests adapted to specific rainfall patterns and temperature regimes along the Caspian coast may find those conditions no longer exist in their current location. The Daintree faces increased cyclone intensity and changing rainfall patterns that could shift the boundary between rainforest and drier forest types. Habitat fragmentation poses another profound threat. Ancient forests like Taman Nagara exist as islands in landscapes increasingly modified by human activity. Species that require large territories or migrate between different areas find their movements blocked. Genetic exchange between populations becomes difficult or impossible. Small, isolated populations are vulnerable to local extinction from disease, natural disasters, or simple demographic bad luck. The loss of large predators like tigers and leopards has cascading effects through the ecosystem, altering herbivore behavior and plant community composition in ways we are only beginning to understand. Direct destruction remains the most immediate threat. Despite protected status, ancient forests face pressure from logging, agricultural conversion, and development. Even in protected areas, illegal harvesting of valuable timber species occurs. The slow growth that makes ancient forest trees so valuable for lumber is the same characteristic that makes their recovery impossible on human timescales. A 500-year-old tree takes 500 years to replace. There is no shortcut. Yet, there are reasons for hope. Recognition of ancient forests' irreplaceable value has grown substantially in recent decades. The Daintree was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1988. The Hyrcanian forests received the same designation in 2019, with Azerbaijan's portions added in 2023. Taman Negara has been protected since 1938. These designations provide legal protection and international oversight, though enforcement remains challenging. Scientific understanding of ancient forest ecology has advanced dramatically. We now recognize that these are not simply collections of old trees, but complex systems with properties that emerge only from long-term, undisturbed development. This understanding changes how we approach forest conservation. Simply setting aside land is not enough if the forest has been logged or otherwise disturbed. True old-growth characteristics require centuries to develop, which means protecting existing ancient forests must be the priority. The mycorrhizal networks we discussed earlier may provide some resilience. Research suggests that landscapes with intact old growth patches can serve as refugia from which fungi and other species can recolonize disturbed areas. The networks may help forests adapt to changing conditions by facilitating rapid sharing of resources and information. Preserving these networks, which requires preserving the forests that support them, may be crucial for maintaining forest resilience in a changing climate. Individual trees, like the ancient bristlecones, have survived climate changes in the past by virtue of their locations in stable microclimates and their tremendous longevity. The oldest individuals have weathered periods warmer and colder than present conditions. Their genetic diversity and the diversity of locations where ancient individuals persist may allow the population as a whole to adapt. However, the current rate of change is unprecedented, and even these remarkable survivors may be tested beyond their limits. Education and ecotourism provide economic incentives for protection. People who visit ancient forests often describe transformative experiences, a sense of deep time and connection with something larger than human concerns. This emotional response translates into political support for conservation. The economic value of intact ancient forests for watershed protection, carbon storage, and biodiversity conservation increasingly exceeds their value as timber. Demonstrating this requires careful economic analysis and political will, but the case becomes stronger as understanding deepens. As we conclude our journey through the world's oldest forests, we return to the question of what makes them matter. These forests are libraries of evolution, containing lineages of plants and animals that stretch back millions of years. They are laboratories where complex ecological relationships have developed over timescales that dwarf human civilization. They are archives of climate history, their tree rings, and preserved pollen recording conditions across millennia. They are proof that patient, incremental adaptation can create systems of remarkable resilience and complexity. Standing in an ancient forest, whether in the humid depths of the Daintree, the montane slopes of the Hyrcanian, or the windswept heights where bristlecones grow, you are in the presence of deep time made tangible. These forests connect us to Earth's history in immediate, visceral ways. The oxygen you breathe was shaped by forests like these. The climate that made human civilization possible was created in part by the cooling effect of ancient forests pulling carbon from the atmosphere. The diversity of life we celebrate and depend upon evolved in ecosystems structured by forests that have persisted for millions of years. Their loss would impoverish not just biology, but the human experience. We would lose living connections to our past and to Earth's deep history. We would lose the species that exist nowhere else, the complex relationships that have evolved over unimaginable time, the beauty that comes from structure accumulated over centuries. Most importantly, we would lose functioning ecosystems that provide services we have not yet fully catalogued, and whose replacement is impossible within any timeframe relevant to human society. The ancient forests teach us patience and perspective. They remind us that truly valuable things take time to develop, that complexity cannot be rushed, that resilience comes from diversity and redundancy accumulated over long periods. In a world that increasingly values speed and immediate results, these forests stand as monuments to different values: persistence, gradual improvement, adaptation over deep time, and the interconnection of all living things. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, perhaps you will carry with you images of these extraordinary places: the filtered green light beneath a Gondwanan canopy, the stark beauty of twisted bristlecone wood against mountain stone, the humid depths of dipterocarp forest alive with bird calls, the autumn colours of Persian ironwood in a temperate forest older than most mountains. These forests have stood through ice ages and warmth, through the rise and fall of species without number, through geological transformations of the planet. They have witnessed time on scales we can barely comprehend. Yet they are fragile, dependent on conditions that we are changing faster than they can adapt. Their future depends on choices we make now, on whether we value immediate profit or long-term preservation, whether we see forests as resources to exploit or as communities to protect, whether we understand our connection to the living world or see ourselves as separate from it. The ancient forests have given us gifts beyond measure. They ask only that we allow them to continue, to keep growing and adapting and persisting as they have for millions of years. If we can grant them that, they will continue teaching their lessons of patience, resilience, and the extraordinary value of time for generations of humans not yet born, standing beneath canopies that remember ages we can only imagine. If you found this journey through deep time calming and fascinating, please consider subscribing to Bedtime Biology and liking this video. Your support helps us continue exploring the quiet wonders of the natural world. Feel free to share your thoughts, questions, or suggestions for future topics in the comments below. Rest well, and remember that somewhere on Earth tonight, ancient trees continue their patient work of growing, one ring at a time, just as they have for longer than civilizations have existed.